There are geniuses like George Carlin and others like Bill Hicks, or funny and famous people like Jim Carrey. But there are also a handful of comedians who have become quite problematic and earned the hatred of the audience, critics, and even their fellow comedians.
These are the 7 most hated comedians of all time.
Dane Cook. We start with a really strong one, generally considered the worst comedian in all history. But on this list, they're all equally disappointing in their own way, and Dane Cook kicks it off. Born in 1972, he emerged alongside a handful of other comedians during the 90s, performing in New York. Soon after, he began appearing more frequently in different places, gaining much more fame, but at a certain point, the stench of his work was exposed. Before the 2000s, when Joe Rogan and Louis C.K. mentioned that, in the occasional stand-up they attended, they noticed some stand-up comedians who will later be imitated by Cook. Later, in a conversation, Louis told him that he believed he stole those jokes, to which Dane angrily responded that he would never do that, and that it wouldn't be worth the risk.
I kind of think you did.
Dude, why would I steal 3 jokes from you when I have hours of material? Why? Why would I do that? Risk my reputation?
This was during his heyday when he started making movies and shows, some of which were quite good, while others were not so notable. When the audience began to notice these similar bits to Louis, it became increasingly clear. Dane was stealing material from CK. Louis even joked a few times about not doing anything about Dane's plagiarism, but as he explained, he confronted him quite insistently. Joe Rogan also joined the people accusing Cook of plagiarism. In 2012, he stirred things up again at the Laugh Factory, clashing with many comedians, dismissing them to perform as an act of egocentrism and superiority. Given his position, this was truly impossible. This was another factor contributing to his downfall, along with controversies, possibly harassing a waiter, or staying longer than he should, and openly claiming ownership of the Laugh Factory.
It ended up getting him fired, leaving a bad impression on both the audience and colleagues.
Jay Leno. Boastful, dishonest, and unprincipled. The triad that perfectly describes Jay Leno. This character, this gentleman, was initially a respected host of the NBC late-night show in New York City, The Tonight Show, long before Jimmy. He started a notable career that earned him some admiration, a very satirical personality, and somewhat dark humor, as it was a defining characteristic of Jay.
I would try to impress my mom sometimes with the money people make a show. I remember I actually said this, I called my mom and I said, I think I was talking about Rambo, and I said, you know, Sylvester Stallone got $12 million for 10 weeks' work. And my mother actually said, but what's he gonna do the other 42 weeks?
In his prime, he had a solid fan base, but it all came crashing down when he entered the world of comedy. There, he betrayed his roots by delving into stand-up and earned the hate of many famous faces. Among them was actor Arsenio Hall, who claimed he would love to kick Leno's ass and accused him of being a two-faced man who is spreading a racist and insulting rumors. Another detractor was Jimmy Kimmel, who questioned his comedic skills and stated in an interview with the New York Times that those who like Leno are largely the stupid group. George Lopez, another star, said on the Scott and Erica show that he hoped to start a fight with Leno. He said that he is the biggest two-faced dude in TV and that he felt insulted when he was in the middle of his surgery, and Jay called him, acting all friendly, and then stabbed him in the back later. That made it evident that he is equally terrible as a program host and as an interviewer. Then we have people like Patton Oswalt commenting that among comedians who don't like him, Jay Leno is one of them, although he doesn't think he's one of the worst in history, but he does find him disappointing and boring.
Comedians that don't like Jay Leno now, and I'm one of them, we're not like, oh my god, Jay Leno sucks. It's that we're so hurt and disappointed that one of the best comedians of our generation, that he was truly one of the best stand-ups, willfully shut through that switch off and went, no more for you guys, this.
Another famous face, eager to show their strong support for Conan O'Brien during the late-night talk show war, was Rosie O'Donnell, the comedian who had her own syndicated daytime chat show in the 1990s. She told the HBO Critics Association panel that she believed Jay Leno had played dirty.
You know, Jay was told 5 years ago that it was his turn to give up the driver's seat, right?
Right.
That is not his bus. When they say, hey, you're done, you give the keys back and you say thank you. You don't flatten the tires of the guy who comes next, you know?
Right.
So to me, I don't know. For everything it is.
These are some of the comments among a dozen more who believe that Leno is a traitor in one of the activities that propelled him. He betrayed both during his comedy career and during his role as the host and interviewer of one of the most famous programs that continues on TV screens today, The Tonight Show, which was satirical and even discriminatory. Our next superstar is Brendan Peter Schaub, also known as Big Brown, the Hybrid, or the Sting. Brendan Schaub is a comedian, podcast host, and former mixed martial artist. Quite the package, right? After retiring from mixed martial arts in 2014, basically because because of the poor performance, Schaub began pursuing a stand-up comedy career following his friend recommendation. This friend is Joe Rogan. Initially, he toured and performed with Brian Callen until August 2016, when he made his solo comedy debut at the Comedy Store in Los Angeles, California. In January 2019, Brendan Schaub recorded his first Showtime comedy special, You'd Be Surprised.
Shooting my first comedy special tonight. Oh wow, good for you. Good for you.
Which premiered on May 18th, 2019. A few years later, on April 28, 2022, Schaub released his second comedy special, El Gringo Papi, available for streaming on YouTube. Their initial shows were produced by Red Fox until a dispute in 2016, at which point they left Red and started producing the podcast themselves. Schaub and Callen also began traveling to perform shows that were a blend of a live podcast and a stand-up comedy duo. However, in Schaub's career trajectory, his work has been questioned and criticized because in many of his performances, he displayed a significant amount of discrimination and racism. Apart from that, he has been considered a poor comedian, even receiving a rating of 1.5 stars out of 10 on IMDb. In his performances, he often makes jokes about his family, wife and children, many of which are derogatory and explicit, with a focus on Mexico and Mexicans, where his current partner is from. He has been harshly criticized for his racist remarks, accused of repeatedly lying in the anecdotes he tells during his shows, and in stealing the jokes from other less famous comedians, and even TikTok videos. And lately, he started a weird and painfully cringe process against Bobby Lee and his wife Kalila, who during the podcast mentioned a nameless guy that wanted to have sexual relationship with her. So basically, he just told the world that it was him. It seems that this is the true face of Brendan Schaub, and there is no hope.
Besides all his fame, he's still pushing, like a real fighter. And maybe someday the world will see the best and the greatest show ever, performed by Brendan.
Kathy Griffin. Actress and writer, she has participated in several shows, movies, and various other projects like Shrek and A Crazy Person at Home. Kathleen Mary Griffin has had a somewhat controversial career. Her work as a writer and comedian cannot be considered catastrophic, as general reviews are quite mixed, mostly falling in the 3 to 5 range on IMDb. The most remarkable aspect of her work was the HBO special that received a rating of 8.0, which is quite notable. But why is she so disliked? Well, that's the issue. As a person, she has been involved in a series of controversies that don't help her reputation. One of the most notable incidents was when she posed with a disfigured head of Donald Trump, making an Islamic expression. This event may be familiar to some. These actions led to at least 4 theaters canceling her performances due to the controversial nature of her work, after New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania canceled her November shows. Their only response was that it was because of her recent controversies, citing concerns about the safety of their customers and staff. This is not to mention that when Elon Musk bought Twitter and began selling verified accounts, she changed her name to his in a parody and got her account removed. But the question that arises is, why is she not acclaimed? Trump was disliked at that time, and many people made jokes about Musk, so she could have been loved for making such jokes, no? The answer is simple: her lack of taking a stand on her actions. The reason she has become so disliked is not due to her poor shows, but because she apologizes whenever she can for everything she says. For example, she apologized for the Trump incident.
I'm a comic. I crossed the line, I moved the line, then I cross it. I went way too far.
And then she has been seen apologizing in the media for making offensive jokes.
One important thing about comedians is their stance. Bill Hicks, George Carlin, they were individuals. They didn't pull back from using a strong language.
Without Carlin's routine about the 7 dirty words, the corruption lawsuit against the Supreme Court would never have been successful. This is why they've garnered detractors.
I mean, most of the time ass is all right. On television you can say, well, you've made a perfect ass of yourself tonight. But you can't say, you half-ass. Only perfect asses allowed.
Scott Thompson, also known as Carrot Top, is a unique individual. He's on this list not because he's bad or insecure. While it's true that his work as a comedian has its flaws, his main problem is how he's targeted by other comedians, being, in his own words, a joke to them.
Like, I was the shit. I was just filling the punchline.
You were a whipping boy.
Scott, the son of a prominent NASA scientist, at the age of 58, has had his own show at the Luxor Hotel in Las Vegas for over a decade. He specialized in situational humor or making fun of his appearance. Recently, he has been caught up in controversy, or more accurately, due to his sudden increase in muscularity and surgeries, which attracted some attention and made him a target of hate. But the hate didn't start from this point, but even before. His appearance has always been unusual, not to mention his highly motivated personality. The main people passing judgment on him are celebrities and other comedians who take advantage of his behavior and sense of humor.
To make fun of Carrot Top is kind of hack. Because you know, because it used to be, it's funny, but now 36 years doing it.
Both Trey Parker and Matt Stone of South Park have shown a certain aversion, and Mike Judge even created a character to mock him. Jeff Dunham and Larry the Cable Guy also often make jokes about him. Even Mark Maron has commented that he is the punching bag for comedians, which is completely true. But it also doesn't help that a significant part of his act revolves around self-criticism and expressing deep self-loathing, often through poorly constructed jokes that don't even funny. He has indeed mentioned on many occasions he feels the hatred for his body, coupled with criticisms of his surgeries and steroid use. But what does the general public think of the comedian? The reviews are mixed, but in most forums, many comment that he is a humorless person, and it's understandable. Due to the way he delivers his style of comedy, you can't expect more. Jeff Dunham. Jeffrey is a comedian born in Dallas, United States, who has dedicated his life to acting, comedy, and puppets. Yes, a puppet show. In fact, his acts revolve around this.
I don't want to go home. Why not? I think my house is haunted. Why do you think that? My wife is there.
According to his own words, he started being a ventriloquist at a very young age when his parents gave him a puppet for Christmas. His prime time was during his early shows, in a time when his comments and thoughts were generally favorable. But Dunham's quality was primarily as a performer rather than as a comedian. That's why his decline and hatred were inevitable, and his freefall happened when people began to tire of his sense of humor. People started to stop watching him, and critics couldn't help but mention why his show had become the worst thing in the world. Reaching a point where his entire performance received negative reviews with his racist, offensive, misogynistic, and anti-Semitic puppets. They were considering it the absolute worst in the world.
What's with all the Jews? We're in Israel. That's so funny. Yeah, okay, Israel. Yeah, that's really funny. What?
The thing is, when it comes to a man whose jokes revolve around a gay therapist or look at computers as something that damages the brain, they are just bad. We're facing humor that's boring, offensive, and devoid of wit. It's not the same as making dark humor jokes. It's not the same as having a stand-up routine that covers these topics. The idea is for them to be funny, and according to popular opinion, Jeff Dunham is not. He's just offensive. The problem lies in his time at Comedy Central, where a significant part of his show consisted of asking the audience if they wanted him to be honest. Over the years, the audience has started to lose affection for him, especially his retro fan base, who have grown tired of seeing the same thing all the time, labeling it as unfunny, uncreative, and only offensive. The most notable thing is that he's a ventriloquist. Carlos Mencia. Carlos Mencia is a comedian who became very popular thanks to his television show Mind of Mencia. He was born on October 22nd, 1967, and for years he gained the love and admiration, even of fellow comedians like George Lopez, Bobby Lee, and many more. However, as the years went by, he faced harsh criticism for something very simple: plagiarism. We're facing a man who doesn't feel embarrassed about his actions. When he's not being accused of theft, he often tells jokes that touch on sensitive political topics and may be considered offensive. If his problem wasn't his stand-up, which was genuinely funny on many occasions, although it can't be denied that he sometimes crossed the line when performing. But everything would change when Joe Rogan publicly confronted him for his performances at the 2007 Comedy Store.
If someone steals a riff from a song, that shit's in the news constantly. Motherfuckers steal shit and make it on HBO.
In Rogan's podcast, he exposes it clearly, where it's evident that he used material from Bill Cosby, taking word for word without any shame. This, in general, created a lot of disappointment. We're talking about a man who, for many years, was one of the greats in comedy. Even his arguments became too vague and convoluted, as we can see in the Tiger Belly podcast, where they gave him a chance to defend himself. He didn't arrive at any concrete defense.
Anytime, even to this day, bro. Yeah. Somebody says, you stole a joke. I go, okay, well, what joke was it? Not angry. Like what joke?
With this, many comedy enthusiasts and members of the comedian community felt disappointed and disillusioned with Mencia, taking it for granted that he has indeed committed plagiarism, which is considered a serious violation of ethical standards in comedy. Some comedians, such as George Lopez, also expressed their disapproval of the accusations and Mencia's behavior. As a result of these controversies, Carlos Mencia's popularity significantly declined. His TV show was cancelled after 4 seasons, and his live comedy career was also affected. While he still has followers and continues to perform, the allegations of plagiarism dropped a shadow over his career and his public image forever. Each of these comedians has a reason for being in this top, some because of the stolen jokes, others out of fear, some simply for not renewing their content and becoming boring over the years.
But can they all come back one day? I would really love to see it happen.